Now, the Knicks finished the regular season with 51 wins, beating Brooklyn on Sunday. This is a Knicks team that has reached this 50-win plateau twice in a row. And really, you look back at the recent history of this franchise, there's no question this period is right up there with the best of the last 20, 25 years. But I don't know. I get the sense, Steve, I don't know what you think. I get the sense that there's a lot of nervous energy maybe among the fan base, and I think rightfully so. But I want to know, how would you assess the season overall thought?
Yeah, it's amazing how spoiled we get in New York after a lot of 17-win seasons. 51-win season feels almost disappointing. I think the expectations were just high because you took a team and you sort of went all in, after last year's 50-win, a team that probably should have gone to the Eastern Conference Finals. And then you add the talent of Karl-Anthony Towns, Mikal Bridges. You sort of go all in around Jalen Brunson. And there just has been something missing this year. And look, I think it's going to be tested right away with Detroit, because Detroit looks like the sort of team that the Knicks were and that the fans loved. They're tough, they're overachieving, hardworking young team. It's going to be interesting right away to see how they pass this test. And look, I think, it may sound like an exaggeration, but I think if the Knicks don't get past the first round somehow, there's going to be changes probably.
Yes.
I know there's been a lot of pressure. People mentioned Tom Thibodeau. I've heard rumors, front office stuff could happen. Mikal Bridges is up for an extension. And there's going to, a decision's got to be made whether you think long-term he's the answer that you thought he was when you gave up 5 first-round picks for him. To me, this is a real make-or-break period that's going to tell you what this season was, more than the 51 wins.
I agree with you, Steve. Cody, I want to hear you on the Pistons, but I just want to add in here, is this a team that just was tired at the end of the regular season, or was not really engaged at the end of the regular season, and is going to show the Knicks fan base and the NBA what they are, that they really are this 51-win 3 seed, and they're going to come out strong against the Pistons? And if not, I've been writing about it, and Steve, I'm with you. I do think that there's a strong possibility, a solid possibility that changes are coming if they flame out against Detroit, or even if they're non-competitive in the second round against the Boston Celtics. I think earlier this year, somebody asked me about Tom Thibodeau, and I thought, just based on everything that had happened, everything that I'd heard coming into the year, I didn't think there was a scenario where the Knicks would change their head coach. But now, more recently, just having conversations with people and seeing kind of which way the wind is blowing, I think this is the stakes are high for Tom Thibodeau going into this postseason.
I'd say 2 things there. One, that there's a lot of finger pointing that happens in this organization in its history. Whenever anything goes wrong, a 3-game losing streak brings that out. And look, we've seen what's happened with some coaches that have been to the finals, have been coach of the year in just recent days, recent months this season. I don't think anything's assured. And I think what Tom Thibodeau has done for this organization is tremendous. But when you see Mike Malone get let go in Denver, there's just expectations, and if you don't live up to them, even with the contract extension kicking in, at some point there's always fire where there's smoke.
Right. And maybe a little bit more stability right now in Detroit with the team that Cody is covering with JB Bickerstaff and co. Cody, what did you make of what you saw from this team across the season?
Just overall, that this team has finally got through the dark stages of their rebuild. And look, I think we all can agree that none of us expected the Detroit Pistons to be this good. You take a look at the fact that they finished the season 44-38. It's their best record since the 2015-2016 campaign. And you also had an opportunity to experience here in Detroit one of the best one-year turnaround in league history. And if somebody want to argue the best one-year turnaround in league history, I would give them the opportunity to do so, because if you go back and you take a look at some of the best 1-year turnarounds throughout league history, of course, the number one, the best 1-year turnaround that everybody likes to talk about is the Boston Celtics. 2007, they finished with what, 21 wins. And then the following year, they go on and win the championship. And I believe they finished the regular season, correct me if I'm wrong, like 64 to 67 wins or whatever the case might be. However, you look at a situation where they added not one, but 2 Hall of Famers in Ray Allen and Kevin Garnett to go along with Paul Pierce. You know, you can even go all the way back to the late 70s, early 80s when you take a look at the turnarounds the Lakers had in terms of building their dynasty, the turnaround that the Boston Celtics had in terms of building their dynasty, where they added 2 guys that's in the top 10 of all time in Larry Bird and Magic Johnson. The only thing the Detroit Pistons did was added Tim Hardaway, Tobias Harris, Malik Beasley, and JB Bickerstaff, 4 guys who a lot of people were kind of making fun of at the end of last season, especially somebody like Tim Hardaway Jr., who was literally benched as the Dallas Mavericks went on their NBA final run. Nobody knew what to expect from this organization. The Pistons is coming off a season where they went 14-28, had the longest losing streak in league history. Everybody's making jokes about them. So it's like, okay, you know they're not going to be as bad as they have been over the last 2 years, but if everything goes right, they probably will finish the season 10th in the Eastern Conference and literally the first team that's going to be eliminated out the play-in tournament. They didn't just make the playoffs. they bypassed the play-in tournament in general. And then when you take a look at the fact, every single one of those veterans that I just alluded to, they played well. All of the young guys outside of Cade Cunningham, when you look at Jalen Durham, when you take a look at Asar Thompson, when you take a look at Ron Holland, a rookie that they drafted with the number 5 overall pick, there's been on several occasions, Coach J.B. Bickerstaff has talked about his ability to go out there and make winning plays. You look at Isaiah Stewart becoming the defensive anchor. You look at so many young guys, even Jaden Ivey before he went down with his potential season-ending leg injury, the steps that he took. Like, this team literally buckled down in the offseason. They added in the right veterans. They got the right head coach. They went back and got that Detroit basketball identity of grit and physicality. And that's part of the reason why, matter of fact, that's the main reason why we're sitting here talking about the Pistons in the playoffs as the number 6 seed playing against the New York Knicks. And some people, I don't really know how many people are going to look and say that the Pistons are going to come away victorious, but it's part of the reason why you look at this series and say this is going to be arguably one of the most competitive, if not the most competitive first round series that we have here in the NBA.
Yeah, it should be a good one. Cody, you mentioned a lot of factors. You forgot to mention yourself, though. First year on the beat. I think you deserve some credit for this turnaround. This is it's remarkable.
Blame James Edwards.
Yeah, our guy James Edwards. His winning percentage is not strong. Jalen Brunson, Cade Cunningham, guys. Steve, we watched Cade Cunningham in the Garden have his way with the Knicks. What do you think they do against Cade? What's their approach, do you think, against Cade? And can the Knicks win this point guard battle?
Well, I think they can because 2 things. One, the postseason is different than the regular season, and this is Cade's first time around in there. Jalen last year, 4 straight 40-point plus games. He's shown that he can do this on the biggest stage. Cade is going to not only have to kind of live with the pressure of being the guy who's lifting this team. You can talk about the veterans, but Cade is the engine of that team. And the Knicks just can come at him in waves defensively. And look, this is sort of I guess a statement on the moves you made. You went with Bridges, you went with Anunoby, you signed that huge contract in the summer. And this is the sort of task you're asking them to do, is to take on the role of stopping him. They haven't had a lot of luck defensively against him this year. Although I think Jalen did average more against them than Cade averaged against the Knicks, even in the regular season. I just feel like the experience of Brunson, he sort of knows how to run this thing. He's got help offensively in ways that Cade doesn't have. Karl Anthony Towns can sort of score at will when he wants to also. I just feel like the advantage is the defensive bodies that the Knicks can throw at Cade, and then the help that Brunson gets offensively sort of gives him the nod here. As good as Cade has been this year, and he deservedly might wind up either on the same All NBA team or ahead of Jalen this year.